So, the big question is this: how are ambitious people like us, who don't have a lot of resources, did not go to Ivy League colleges, were not born into wealth, how do we become resourceful enough, use our creativity, our dedication, and a little bit of crazy to bootstrap our way to realizing our dreams? Whether it is launching a new company, launching a new app, or making it to the top of the corporate ladder. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Please like, share, and subscribe to get new episodes, videos, and other updates. Hello there, and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host, Manuj Aggarwal, and today I'll be talking to Nicholas MacAskill. Nicholas has spent half a decade working at the intersection between marketing, sales, and technology. Early in his career, he coached financial advisors on a national scale while working for a Canadian startup company, helping them implement modern software and marketing tools. Nicholas formerly ran his own copywriting business where he helped individuals and small business connect through strategic communications. This was later transitioned into his current venture, Rapidly Agency, where he's currently a partner. Nicholas now works with businesses across Eastern Canada and US around brand development and revenue generation through digital strategies. He's also the host of podcast Advanced Rapidly, which features high-profile industry leaders and discovers the mindsets and actions behind entrepreneurial success. A firm believer of showing up and working hard, Nicholas has faced challenges, getting fired from multiple jobs, and sacrificing just about everything to bootstrap and grow his business. It's with pleasure that we welcome Nicholas to our show and learn from his experiences. So, welcome, Nicholas.
Great to be on your show, Manoj. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, so let's dive in. Let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey and some of the early challenges you faced in starting your company. Let's talk about that, and you can feel free to share anything about your story and your experience with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you go to start any company, I think there's a lot of abstraction, there's a lot of question marks, and you have to figure out what's the first thing that you can really focus on to move the needle forward. That's the hardest part. And I mean, that understanding what the levers are, understanding what the productive actions are, that continues to be a challenge beyond just the early days. Mm-hmm. But I think it's especially challenging at the beginning because you have nothing to really base it on. You have no feedback from customers. You have no feedback from team members. You just need to really take action. And that's really where I saw a lot of success in finding those first couple of clients, is just really picking up the phone, talking to everybody I could. Huge focus on sales. I'm big on sales. I don't consider myself a salesperson, but I think sales is always the biggest challenge that you face in any business.
Yeah.
So when I started Rapidly, I knew that because like you had said in my intro, I had spent a lot of time talking to financial advisors, financial planners around the country, and just learning from them around how they approached growing their business. Also a professional services firm, obviously different products, different industry. But just really seeing kind of where they had success, and then the value that I really brought to them in those conversations was somebody to really have a strong focus on process, mm-hmm. And digital enablement and everything as well. But more than anything, just being able to proceduralize some of the problems that they came across. There was a quote I heard once, and I think it was, if you have a problem, turn it into a process. Mm-hmm. And that's how I really approached every conversation I had in that role. And also how I approached starting to grow my own business as well, right? If there's a problem in front of me, then, what's a set of steps that I can take to tackle this, and when you have a set of steps in place to tackle a problem, you start to, you've got a framework first off for that initial action. but you've also got a framework for reflecting on, the progress that you made in solving that problem, how that problem was solved, and you can base future processes off of it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if I were to really narrow it down, the early experiences, where did I have success? I mean, we've been in business about a year. We've got some good results, client case studies. We're really on the right track. I think the trajectory can continue. But getting to this point up until now, really it was just a focus on action, having those sales conversations, finding people, clients that I could really mesh with and communicate well with and really work together with, and then taking a really strong process-based approach to, our own operations in carrying out projects, but also, in the outreach with potential prospects and, and helping businesses, with their marketing objectives. So it's, a bias towards action, really, really strong focus on process. Mm-hmm. And I think those two things help to shape a really great framework for where we're at now, and being able to take some of those insights and realizations and continue to grow from here. So that's awesome. Those two things were really, really useful early on. I mean, as far as the challenges go, there's always going to be challenges. I think you come across a lot more if you sit back and you try to analyze things too much and you philosophize, you're too philosophical early on. Again, it's just taking action and really diving in. Some of the challenges that I had early on, I mean, I had went to university on the east coast of Canada, and it was an okay experience. I had some good years there, but you don't really learn how to grow a business in university, right? There are these fundamentals in building a business, or sales fundamentals, whatever it is, that you don't really pick up within a university curriculum. So when I started working, I had a few different roles at the time, and you mentioned in the intro that I had gotten fired from a few. A couple I left, a couple I had gotten fired from. I mean, that just really came down to it not being like, I wasn't an incompetent employee by any means. Like, I was always a hard worker, but for me, it's when you're not 100% passionate about something, like when I'm not 100% passionate about what I'm doing, then I just tend to lose focus on it. So the early challenges were really, for me in my career, figuring out what's the thing that I can really dial into and pour my passions into. Eventually I found that, first with the money finder and the role, client advisor facing role, that was great. But I really wanted to go into business for myself. And I found it with Rapidly. And that's why I'm still doing it. So I haven't quit doing this yet, and I don't plan to anytime soon. I have a history, a background of some mental health challenges as well. I have ADHD, some anxiety and stuff, which I've really been able to, again, just procedurizing everything, really logical process-based approach to even that, where I have these routines in my day and everything now that allow me to be a lot more effective and efficient. Yeah. And I know I have to stick to those routines or things kind of go off the rails. So it took me a little while early in my career to figure out how to develop those routines as well. But eventually I did. I think every adversity that you face in life, whether it's dealing with mental health challenges or getting let go from a job, you always pull a nugget of wisdom from it that you can leverage when future challenges come up. So I feel I was fortunate to have had some adversity and to have gone through some tough things earlier on in my life, because challenges aren't going to stop coming on your plate. They're always going to be there. And the sooner you can face some significant ones, I think the more equipped you're going to be to face the challenges that come up down the road as well. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, those are very important lessons. Knowing yourself, knowing your client, and taking action.
Yeah.
And then from what you said, coming up with some process to deal with these situations. And also, I can definitely relate to your challenges because I've had similar issues, and I know a lot of people go through similar challenges in life, and these challenges make us what we are today. So that's well said for sure. So yeah. Now let me ask you, when you were going through, your company, is it a service-oriented company? It provides a service or a product?
Yeah, I mean, it's a service-based business. I don't like to kind of put it into buckets. Like, I don't like to, when I speak to clients or potential clients, I don't like to say, we focus on Google Ads or we focus on social media. I mean, I don't like to start conversations from that point. I think it really needs to start with the business. What problems are they facing, and then going from there. So we offer a pretty wide breadth of services. There's some things like we just redid our website recently, but there are some services that we've done for clients that aren't even listed there. I mean, we want to take as much time as possible to understand what the business needs, where they're at, what kind of cash flow is available, what kind of investment makes sense for them, and then provide as customized a plan as possible, right? So I have a process that I run through with businesses to really ask the right questions and understand what they need. And then I have another process for, any road that we go down for the services that we do, to make sure that we can build out a plan that is very specific to them. I mean, if there's one thing I had to say we do a lot of, there's a lot of brand development work, strategic messaging, that type of thing. And I think the reason we do the most of that is because, you can run, Facebook ads all day, or you can, you can look at CRO, conversion rate optimization, and, try to get the cost per clicks down and, do all this really technical stuff. But, if the brand and the message isn't there at the bottom of the funnel, I think it doesn't really matter anyway. So I like to start there when we can. I just think, one thing I've known to be true is that there are these stories that we tell ourselves as human beings that, give us meaning in the world, right? That make us feel like what we're doing is important, or maybe there's something that we should do that's important. And that's what I feel brand is about. Mm-hmm. It's giving, a consumer or another business, whatever it is, an experience that really ties into the story that they tell themselves about the world, or, maybe opening up another way to think about things that they can kind of incorporate into their story. So it needs to really start there. Marketing is about psychology more than anything. I mean, even today with over 5,000 MarTech solutions out there, with technology advancing at the rate that it is, marketing will always be about psychology at its fundamental core. And the stories that people tell themselves, we need to be able to relate and tie into that. So that's why I like doing the brand work above all else. But it's a pretty wide. The work that we've done stretches pretty wide as far as services go. Yeah.
All right. So in our audience, there are many entrepreneurs. Either they are starting off or they are considering starting their own company. Will you recommend them selling customized products or services, or will you recommend selling sort of out of the box solutions?
I mean, it's interesting because it's like service is time consuming. It really is, and you see a lot of agencies trying to build out of the box solutions that they can offer just to streamline things a little bit more, or building products rather than trying to productize their offering, rather than the focus on service. And I understand that, because service can be abstract, it can be time consuming, there's a lot of factors that go in there, and if you can turn your service into a product, it's probably going to save you a lot of time. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, it depends what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, me and my work with clients, I know that there probably isn't going to be like one thing that I can really build, or one service model that I can kind of build that's going to apply to everybody. And from an operational perspective, it could have challenges, but when you're looking at it depends what you're doing. When you're looking at the SaaS market in particular, even there, you see a lot more professional services being incorporated into their models, and customer success is, there's been a lot more emphasis around that in the last 5 years or so than prior to. And that's just that kind of strategic, professional services type approach that people really need, because at the end of the day, it ties back to what I was saying. Every business is different, and it's not enough sometimes just to take a product out of the box and use it. You need really customized, tailored consultation. So I think it depends. I mean, you can build a product and it's the same for everybody. And, usually those are at a lower price point, I would say. And they can be valuable. But, it just goes back to what I was saying. It depends on who your market is and what you're offering. I think there can be room for both, but, it really just comes down to each business on each end of the transaction, I think. Yeah.
Great. Now, if I understand it correctly, you bootstrap your company, or did you have some resources that you invested earlier on?
Yeah, I mean, I actually started my business with quite, some debt. So I was in the minuses when I started my business. And, that was stressful for sure, but I think it was just the idea of just going into work, 9 to 5 every day, kind of punching the clock type thing for 10 years. That was just way more, or 10 to 40 years. That was just way more stressful for me than, going entrepreneur, as you say, and your theme. It also gave me some urgency to really grind, to really knuckle down on, doing the things that I needed to do, and no vanity actions either, where like there's, sometimes you're replying to emails and you're doing this and you're doing that, and you feel like you're being productive, but it's not really moving the needle forward. So whenever I kind of caught myself like just doing work just to do work that wasn't necessarily moving things forward, it was that debt, and that kind of the fact that I'm bootstrapping, the fact that I don't have $200,000 to help fund the business, just gave me that extra little kick and push to think, hey, I better switch gears here and really focus on what's important. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. I think there are a lot of consultants and agencies and agency owners that start just on the service end, and then once they've built a business and have more capital, they start to build products and they get into the SaaS game a little bit. You really need to look at what's going to generate cash flow early on when you are bootstrapping. And for us, it was just, at the beginning, we weren't doing pay-per-click. We weren't really doing social media or social media ads. We were just finding businesses that didn't have a good website, basically, and reaching out to them and just building websites. And those were the first couple of customers. It was just simple website projects. But, I remember, people saying, what are you doing selling websites? It's 2018, websites have been around for 30 years. And, I try not to acknowledge groupthink too much, and just, these nuances that people kind of think of, and just focus on, okay, well, what's going to generate revenue? Like, what do I really need to do right now to move things forward? And at that time, it just made a lot of sense. It seemed like a quick route to working with some great clients and generating revenue, to just start out with, selling websites and putting together great websites. And from there, it just kind of made its way into other projects and referrals. And, and now we're doing a lot of really, really great work, which we'll probably continue to expand on and go from there. So when you're bootstrapping, I mean, for your listeners, if there's, somebody out there that is thinking about, leaving their job, or, starting their own business, and they feel like, what they ideally would like to do, it's just too far of a path, or too much that would have to be done within the constraints of the resources that they have. Look for the simplest possible service, or the simplest possible thing related to ideally what you would like to do, and focus on that early on, because once you start moving towards something, well, there's a few things that happen. I mean, obviously it needs to make you money, or you're going to starve. But second of all, once you start moving towards something, it's going to open up all these other lanes and avenues and opportunities, and you're going to have a much better chance of getting into that ideal state of where you would ideally like to be, essentially. Yeah,
That's
so that
awesome.
would be, those were the early days. Yeah.
No,
which were only 14 months ago. So.
Yeah. Yeah, very important piece of advice there. You had a lot of challenges, and you started the business with a negative cash balance. So, focusing on simple things, and not paying too much attention to groupthink, and focusing on cash flow and sales. Those are very, very important lessons if you're looking to bootstrap. But if you decide to do that, I mean, it's entirely possible. As you've heard Nick and some other guests on this podcast. So thanks a lot for sharing that experience. Now, let me ask you another question. How did you find the courage to overcome the challenges? Like as you said, you got fired from a couple of jobs, or you left a few jobs on your own. And if I can share with the audience, you had some addiction challenges as well. So how do you overcome all those challenges and say to yourself that you want to change your life for the better?
Yeah, I mean, so the addiction challenges were a little earlier on, as a teenager. I think it happens probably for lots of people. But looking back, I probably wouldn't change that. Like I said earlier on, like I'm kind of grateful I went through some tough things earlier on in life, because it built thick skin, and it built perspective that some people go their whole lives without having. Mm-hmm. So like, it's always what I would tell listeners that are going through adversities, and I've had quite a bit in the first 24 years of my life. Is it's always going to be terrible and discouraging and awful when you're going through it. Like, there's no way to avoid that. There's no piece of advice that somebody can give you that's going to make actually going through the challenge and the hardship not awful. Mm-hmm. But after you go through a few hardships, you really see how they help you. And it's easier to kind of rationalize it and become more logical from there. I just think it's always good to just reflect on, what did it teach you? Because what did you gain from it? And when you do that, it kind of balances out the negative impact that the adversity kind of had, and shows you a positive. So it kind of helps in mindset in dealing with it and subsequent challenges. But you also get that really great lesson that, not only helps you when other challenges pop up, but it'll just help you in general. Like even when things are going good, how to handle, it, right? Like there have been times, in my business or earlier on in my career where things were going really good and I got complacent and a little bit lazy, and then they start to fall off the rails and you're facing all these challenges again. Now I know when things are going good, that's not a sign that you should let off the gas. I mean, that's a sign that you should push harder, and it took me a couple, hills and valleys, right, to really learn that. Yeah. But you do learn it over time. So, I really thrashed and banged for a couple of years of, I was having some successes in my career and I was, doing well and excelling, working for other companies, but, it was a roller coaster. The roller coaster, it just kind of evens out over time. And that's a result of, picking things up, as you go. It's tough to be in business for yourself. It's a whole nother host of challenges, I think, because rather than somebody else, rather than a boss or a manager kind of giving you feedback on a monthly or a weekly basis, you're observing that feedback directly. So you need to be taking stock of what's working, what's not yourself. Yeah. But I think, in life, that's the best possible skill you can have, is that ability to understand what's working, what's not, recognize the patterns, and take those patterns and just use them to proactively carve out the best possible path. And as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you get really, really good at noticing patterns, and you get really good at extrapolating those patterns into the future. And the world is getting, a lot more complex, right? Like there's, with technology advancing the rate that it is, with social media just amplifying pretty much every disaster, or, even the positive, mostly the disasters, but the positive things as well that are happening in the world. It's really easy for people to get confused and worried, and in a big way, our reward systems are mixed up because through social media you're seeing everything else that's happening in the world, and then it just gives you kind of a weird view on things, and you relate it to your own life. And in a world where like all these things are happening and it's becoming more and more complex, having self-awareness and being able to recognize patterns and being able to learn things quickly is just becoming more and more valuable. I did a podcast, I obviously host a podcast as well, Advance Rapidly, where we explore the mindsets and actions behind entrepreneurial success. And I have a lot of really high profile industry leaders, much higher profile than myself, on the podcast. And I had Rebecca Costa on. She's a American sociobiologist, futurist, world-renowned author. That's actually going live later today. If any of your listeners want to take a peek, and she's done a lot of work on that, on the complexity that the growing complexity, in our world today. And in a world where that's as complex as ours is going to be, there's going to be a lot more wrong answers than there are right answers, because we're embarking into this space where there might be a handful of people that are going to be able to understand predictive analytics, AI, all these these data systems that we formed and that we're going to be able to use to predict future outcomes. And you're not everybody's going to be an AI expert, right? But I don't know if you'll need to be, but you'll certainly need to be aware, and you'll certainly need to be self-aware on where you can fit in this new, in this new world, essentially. And if you're not proactive around that, if you're not proactive in thinking, how does my skill set fit, into the new world that's kind of shaping, then I think you're going to have a really hard time, and you're going to be frustrated, and you're going to be confused. So just that self-awareness, that willingness to fail quickly, and learn from it, just becomes so much more important when things get as complex as we're going to see. But Rebecca, she's done 30 years worth of research on this. She puts it a lot more in depth and eloquently than I ever could. So, for listeners that are interested in this particular topic, definitely check out the podcast as well. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing that. And I think we are coming to the end of the interview here. Thanks a lot for all the knowledge that you have shared, and some really important piece of advice from your own personal experience. And I can tell that you have all these qualities of courage and resilience, which are very important in entrepreneurial journey. So thanks a lot for sharing openly and candidly. Now, before I let you go, can you talk a little bit about your company and what you do there, what kind of services you provide, and particularly how you can help our entrepreneurial audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think it's relevant as well, because anybody that's entrepreneurial, that's looking at either getting started or is in the early years of starting a business. I do enjoy working with startups that are earlier on. Maybe they just got as low as $50,000 or $100,000 in funding. And they need to develop that initial brand. We're really open to that type of thing. I'm all about relationships. I want to help businesses grow. So anytime we get the opportunity to work with a really promising founder and help shape their go-to-market strategies, we're open to doing that. So that's one thing that we have focused on in the past. Sometimes the startups a little bit earlier on, sometimes a little bit later, but I love being able to bring perspective to maybe a technical founder that doesn't have the marketing knowledge, and help them with those initial go-to-market initiatives. For any other business owners that might be listening, it's or somebody that's looking at starting a business. Again, I don't like to just plaster out the services that we offer. It's what are the problems you're facing? I always want to learn more about that and just see if there's an opportunity for us to work together long term. So definitely get in touch. If anything about my background and our approach kind of inspires you. If I were to give a general piece of advice that I'll emphasize again, it's just it's just taking action. At the end of the day, I think it's the most important thing. It sounds funny, even if you don't know what to do, if you don't know the answer, just reach out to somebody, reach out to 5-10 people, and just have conversations with them. Just even if you don't know what you want to talk about, chances are they'll be good at asking questions and they'll pull some things out of you. But it's something that I'm just consistently reminding myself every day is, take action, and don't sit back and get complacent. And I just think that's so important. Thanks a lot, Manuj, for having me on the show. I wish I would have shaved. I wish I would have,
It's all good. It's all good.
Better groomed, but I didn't know it was going to be a video interview. But I'm looking forward to just hearing others' feedback on this show, and it's really great to be on. for sure.
Yeah, no, it was great to have you, and don't worry about the looks. This is what real entrepreneurs look like when they're working. So
it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you, Nicholas.
Yeah.
Thanks for this great interview. Thanks. So again, I'm Manuj Aggarwal, and thanks a lot for joining us on Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. And now, if you are an existing or an aspiring technology entrepreneur, then I invite you to check out my new online workshop, Bootstrapping Your Tech Startup Dreams. Go to go.tetranoodle.com/boot-podcast and sign up for free. I want to make sure more successful and sound decisions are made every day in your tech projects. Let's start finding solutions to your problems. So go to go.tetranoodle.com/boot-podcast and I look forward to helping you with your tech startup.